Commanders, welcome on today's third episode of Commanders Hub, where we'll be talking about none other than territory capture, a feature that was launched on Star Trek Fleet Command about a month ago. And today, Commanders will be joined by DesignerDunsel, DesignerData, DesignerKeenser, and we'll be talking about none other than territory capture, like we mentioned before. So let's get right into it. First question I'd like to ask you guys is, what inspired you to make territory capture such an amazing feature that a lot of the players are really enjoying, including myself?
I think it was really a combination of factors, right? I think I look at both how Star Trek in its exciting, evolution. I look at things like the kind of Klingon Romulan conflict and even like other things from DS9 with the Dominion War, where all these factions align and realign themselves. All of those kind of ideas were there in a kind of soft Cold War that went hot sometimes. And, so in the Star Trek IP, I think the notion of these, massive conflicts and the division of space of like neutral zone and stretching and, changing over time are notionally there. And we thought about a map, from the beginning, that we put a map together and it showed Federation and Romulan and Klingon. And we were like, well, but we want to have a game that's really about the players, and the players feel like they own the game. And that we've always been talking for a long time, but how do we make the players own a section of the map? And that idea has been living, and breathing among the development team for quite some time to figure out how to deliver that to players. Territory capture was the ultimate expression of that. Sure, of course, we've looked across the history of strategy games on PC and mobile, and how do we make a kind of shard world have this fun experience that is home to both some end game players and to some middle game players, that they can conflict with one another, give them a reason to conflict, give them a reason to fight and vie with one another. That isn't just like, I want to smash your base and take your stuff, right? It's a controlled arena experience that they can fight. And the big thing about it is that we wanted it to embrace multiple different player segments of player level and different experiences and different amount of age and time in the game, so that we tried to make the map so that it was impossible for just one alliance to conquer the whole galaxy. We wanted it to be like there were going to be many different tiers and strengths of alliances that could reach out and control portions of space. That was kind of the two ideas that really had to be baked in it from the beginning.
Now, for me, there are really three big elements here. Keenser already talked a lot about the lore aspect in here and the power fantasy for our players. Ultimately, the ability to have missions behind or within enemy lines, and what that means for our players within the alliance. The ultimate fantasy of being able to claim a stake within the universe of Star Trek is very strong, and I think it's important that we are delivering on that concept here with territory capture. Second one is the focus. We have a very progression-based map that is on purpose, but it does mean that as an alliance, it is very hard to establish a system that you can claim as a home, which makes it hard to organize a defense on offense against another alliance. And territory capture pretty much does that. Now suddenly there is a space that you as alliance is your home that you're returning to, and throughout all of the player progression within an alliance, there's a reason to be there along with your mates. And lastly, and this is for me one of the most important parts of all of those systems, it is the meta aspect. All of these systems that we are looking at within our game are basically bare bones, are like scaffolding. Ships, officers, and research, all of that is just to build up what can be called a game. But the really interesting part is everything that is in between. That's the social glue, that is the interaction between our players. So us being able to deliver a feature that delivers on exactly that, delivers on that fantasy, allows players to own and build their own stories within the universe. That was the most exciting thing about delivering or building a feature like that and working on a feature like that.
Territory capture feature is one of the things I think that is just a natural extension for Star Trek. It's interesting because as a feature, it existed even before I joined the team, even before launch. The development team has always wanted to do this feature even from before launch, as what's the thing that you're really striving for in Star Trek? Star Trek has a much more open-ended game than I think a lot of other mobile games on the market. Offers that kind of potential. What am I doing in the game? Is it just leveling up to the maximum level as quickly as possible? No, I don't think so at all. We really strive to make an emergent playground for players to do whatever they want. Today I'm doing this. Today I'm doing this other thing. And territory capture, we wanted to create an emergent playground where people could go and own something, where they could have some place that they call a home, and that is theirs, that they earned, and also just a place that's pretty fun to actually do some end game PvP, or PvP at all levels. I think it actually worked out to some extent. And so territory capture is really the first pass of really laying that palette, that making this big space on the map where players can go and create a space that's theirs, can put their name on it, can put their alliance logo on it. And it's the version that you see now is just the first step, and we're looking at really what we can do with this space in the future and how we can make this even more the core of my Star Trek Fleet Command territory.
Now that territory capture is out there, at least the first version, as you mentioned, DesignerDunsel is out there. Which parts of territory capture are you very proud of and happy that players are able to experience?
So I'm pretty happy with at least the structure of the way that you take over systems. The old Game of War games is very kind of just like punch you in the face style gameplay. And I like how the takeovers are at a certain time, are only so much hours out of the week, and let you just have a focus where players can go in. And this is something we very much tried to do, is make it so that everybody can be useful. Clearly, stronger ships will have a bigger impact in a battle, but everybody scores the same number of points for being there. And so there's room for even lower level players to go in and help their alliances. And the alliances with the larger number of players will have more success just from more points, even if they're maybe outgunned in situations. So now there's obviously specific problems that we've had with people blocking systems, and we've gotten a lot more alliances helping other alliances that are not related to the takeover than we expected. And we're looking at that carefully. But in terms of the overall structure, the weekly structure, the takeovers, the way that you can crawl across space, one territory per week, depending on the schedules, I'm pretty proud of that overall structure. And obviously, again, there's lots of things to work on, but I think it's a good foundation.
I think Dunsel is touching on a very important point here. There are some aspects that are always very hard to achieve when you're looking at these kind of territory capture meta systems. One problem that a lot of the games have is stagnancy. The pure concept that at a certain point, the game world reaches an equilibrium where everyone is happy and nobody has a reason to engage within the feature anymore. There's even cost reasons to not engage with the feature anymore. That part is to be seen. We have to see how the feature performs in the long run. We hope we have the systems in place to keep the feature exciting, and we hope that we have upcoming changes in place as well to keep the feature exciting in the future. Actually, coming back to Dunsel's point, when you're looking at player progression, then player progression is kind of a curse and a blessing at the same time. For us, it was very important that an alliance is able to play together. And an alliance does mean that we are talking about players that are vastly different in their progression. It also means that we have alliances that an overall lower progression now are battling against alliances with a higher progression. And that is always a very tight rope walk. On one side, you want to make sure that every player counts, that every player can make an impact on a takeover or the system as a whole. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're respecting all of the progress that was already put in by players, and that players are able to bring in the best ships that they have. So this was a very interesting question to us, and not an easy one, to be sure. But we are pretty happy with some of the dynamics that we are seeing. We have lower level players finding strategies that allow them to make up for smaller ships and outmaneuver their higher end counterparts, which is interesting to see.
Part of understanding the how players are actually taking territory capture, because I know that as we've seen, territory capture as a feature is something that a lot of other games have, and one of the interesting factors that I've seen in other games playing and also in Star Trek Fleet Command is the fact that a lot of smaller alliances right now are at a disadvantage, and they have to find a way, either a strategic way through the galaxy, to try to figure out how to be able to participate in territory capture and be able to own territories. So subsequently, the players were always there's a bit debate on Discord a week ago. Players were saying, yeah, but it's not fair. But other players were saying, yes, okay, but this is part of the politics of the game, right? Smaller alliances now have to try and find other alliances or merge with other smaller alliances to create something bigger, so that they can have then a chance to territory capture. What are your opinions on this?
So we definitely knew going in that in a takeover you have the two or three maybe main competitors. Other people could just come in and rain on people's parades. That was very obvious. We thought that this would definitely happen in maybe the top two and second and third alliance, maybe taking on the first one. Or what we're seeing instead, though, is 7 alliances on this side versus 14 alliances on that side, and so that's a bit beyond expectations, both in for good, for better, or for worse. Clearly, the systems can only handle a certain number of players on some level, and so that's an issue. And then also the fact that every single alliance maybe on a server wants to involve themselves in every single takeover is also an issue from a social standpoint. So we're keeping a close eye on that and looking for potential solutions in the future. But we're aware of the meta, and we're listening very closely to player concerns and collating feedback and looking at potential solutions for the bad aspects of that. What I do want to say as a positive is we very much intended for that to be an organic feature. Players to be for alliances to decide how they want to play, to decide whom they want to ally with or not ally with, and for somebody put it as a good example, the kind of horse trading of like, oh, you help me for this takeover, I'll help you for that takeover. We want that to be possible, but we don't want it to be exploitative or all-encompassing where it just shuts down the fun of the takeovers, obviously. It's a very big topic. It's the core of the kind of PvP gameplay for territory capture, and we're watching it closely and listening to feedback.
The alliance-to-alliance interactions are kind of what makes all of this fun. Within territory capture and outside of territory capture or upcoming meta systems, there will always be a kingmaker on a server, and we're absolutely not opposed to the idea of it. It is too easy for that alliance to play the kingmaker, but the idea of alliances employing other alliances, paying them for their services in order to then have additional support during a takeover, is an idea that makes all of this far more interesting. The question comes rather down to what is the investment for both of those alliances, and what are the opportunities or the ability of both alliances to reach an agreement. What we can see in the future is additional options for alliances to have this kind of horse trading in order to reach a conclusion together. Right now, players are able to find solutions within the game. Yes, absolutely. But I do feel that there's additional systems that we can provide to make a direct alliance-to-alliance interaction and the diplomacy aspect of territory capture a little easier and even open a few more doors.
Aha, alliance tools. I like that. I know it's something the team is also working on as well, but there's a lot of other stuff in the pipe too, so excited to see what's going to come out. So there was one more question that I wanted to lead in from the players, and it was, we talked about this about a couple of days ago with the content creators of the community stream. It's about the fog of war whenever an alliance owns a zone, and why is there still fog of war between those systems?
We knew going into the launch of territory capture that was a limitation on the fog of war system. I think it's safe to say we'd much prefer for it to work that way, but the ability for us to implement that was pretty prohibitive and competed with a lot of other features that went into territory capture and the other features that are going into the future of Star Trek. So that's something we'd like to do in the future, and we're looking at carefully. We're looking for a way to efficiently do it that doesn't compete or won't put off other features. Where once I own a territory, I am able to see into it at all times.
Touching on features on territory capture, I know it's such a massive feature that we have released, and there's so much, and I assume, and this is where you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong, that there are so many things that didn't make the cut for a lot of reasons, because this is how developing a feature for any game happens. So just out of curiosity, what would some of those features be?
A lot of the things in early discussions were related to what I get to do once I own a territory. The services was a very comprehensive method that is expandable that we can do in the future. But two of the things that I, as a designer, like wrote out on my magic list that would have been really cool, I think, were the ability to spawn hostiles of like a type. Maybe like I can set the system up to have swarm guys in it, and the ability to control the nodes that I spawn in a system. So I could just customize what mining nodes I want in the system via the services. So that didn't make it very far and got cut pretty early on as it started to compete with other features and other things on the roadmap for Star Trek generally. But as a player, I think those are some things I'd really look at in the future to potentially have.
I remember, I don't know how annoying this would have been, but I remember a feature you guys were telling me about in the beginning, in the initial phases, where if I own a takeover, then any other player that enters that system would automatically have a, as you said, a hostile spawn, but get attacked by like a super strong hostile.
We're totally doing that.
No, yeah. I love the concept itself. I assume, like, as a player, I'd be so annoyed all the time. Like, come on, I just want to journey through here. Leave me alone. But yeah, it would be interesting.
There's a crazy early version where we had like towers defended by hostiles, like sitting around. You had to like work your way through some waves of enemies and things like that. So yeah, I think any.
Still love that.
Yeah, I still love it.
Mobile.
There's the other version that was like maybe League of Legends match. Yeah. I think we definitely are looking at everybody's wild fantasies for what could go into a territory, and definitely listening to player feedback. It's one thing for me to write down way early on without any context of the feature. Oh, it might be cool if I do this. But then to actually listen to players, what players want on Discord, and to action upon that, and to incorporate those ideas into what can and can't be done, and our own crazy ideas, is the best. So I'm very glad that the feature's out now, and that there's room to improve on it. And I'd love to hear you guys' feedback and what kind of ideas you have for even cooler things than I can come up with.
Rialta Oni Territory Capture Wars. Do it.
This is actually the...
I'll put it right on the top of the list right now. Panic.
I would see it as a great feature.
I think that actually in the end was the main point. From a design perspective, there is one big difference between working on a live game and a direct release title, and that is the difference of what final is for a feature. For any release title, I have to sit down, have to imagine how the feature was played beforehand, and I have to deliver a version that our players are happy with without any player interaction whatsoever. The great thing about working on a live title, though, is when we are working on a feature, we can work on a feature with future thoughts in mind. So territory capture, very much similar to other features, is what we regard as the most important basis. But there's so much more that we want to and can now deliver in the future, and where we can build on top of what we've built so far. But the interesting thing is we can do that with you together. We can listen to the feedback, we can listen to the way, or we can see the way players are interacting with the feature. We can play it out ourselves. And based on that, our decision making can be far stronger than if we had to try to design everything up front. So I'm a very big fan of this situation and the ability for us to deliver in iterations and constantly update features for players. And yes, of course, there's plenty of things that we would want to do in the future. My personal favorite from territory capture that I really liked was the concept of constructables, the ability for alliances to build their own small space stations to control their territory within their territory. And very much looking forward to anything that the community will come up with in the next months.
Looking back, obviously, congratulations, second year anniversary, super pumped. But looking back as well, especially in the last year, just putting a few features out there like warp cancellation or last online status and even faction lock are just some of the few features that we implemented just because of the feedback from players. And obviously, with territory capture being such a community-driven event from this point of view, it'd be great to see what the players come up with, and then the design team and how we could implement some of those features inside. So very curious from my point of view. Well, thanks a lot for that. Talking about new features about territory capture, the Sarcophagus was just launched a few days ago. I'm super pumped because firstly it's a beautiful ship, Klingon battleship, and it's obviously gonna assist the commanders who are captaining it to capture essentially takeovers faster. Could you talk about a bit about the designing of this ship and the impact it'll have on takeovers?
Yes, we are very excited about this ship. With all of the social dynamics that we are introducing with territory capture, we are also very much looking at the kind of combat dynamics that we can introduce with territory capture and beyond. So Sarcophagus is one of the first ships that we're using in order to mix up the combat and the strategies around combat. We actually have a very unique element in Star Trek, which is the RTS element. Players directly are able to control their ships and can decide on who to attack, who to defend. And it is an aspect that right now we haven't really honed in yet, but there's a lot of opportunity here that we want to realize. Sarcophagus is the very first ship of that kind, and it kind of started out when the teams did the playtests, the first playtests for territory capture. Think back of Helm's Deep. You have the chaos of the battle, and then there comes along that one little orc carrying the torch, and suddenly you have a dynamic where both parties are completely focused on that orc. One to bring him down, one to defend him. We know what happens in Helm's Deep, but for our players, this is still very open. And what really gets me excited about this is the offensive and defensive mechanics around the Sarcophagus. I want to see players defending their alliance mates while they are trying to get the Sarcophagus into position. And I want to see the other alliance forming interceptors in order to somehow break the lines and damage and bring down the Sarcophagus.
So the Sarcophagus is the first new combat ship that we've done in a long time, since the ISS Jellyfish, I assume. And its main ability is that it is vastly more powerful when fighting on a takeover node during a takeover. And this is for both attacking or defending. If I attack somebody that's already on the node, or if I am on the node and somebody attacks me, I'll get a massive power boost. Functionally, the aim is that it's such a large power boost that I'm actually able to hit and destroy ships above a few levels above me in power once I get the Sarcophagus there. Now it is slower than other ships, and so it's a bit of a trundle potentially to get over the takeover nodes. But then once I'm there, we're expecting that the value of the my punchiness now is vastly worth the effort to get it there. So it's a pretty exciting combat ship because it's very specific for a purpose for takeovers, but once you're there, it is probably the most powerful ship that we've released outside of a whole new expansion.
It's been a month with territory capture already ensuing, and I've seen a lot of battles myself. I've got into a lot of battles myself, and I think one of the best experiences I've had is the fact that we had to actually merge with a few other alliances. We've had like this transition phase for the past couple of months, and for the past month, sorry, and we had to go. We actually merged into one alliance, all of us together. Then we had to merge into the Discord server, and this Discord server was built much better, and like the whole experience that I had like joining this new alliance was really nice. So that was, and I think this has created, at least for myself, a more social connection with the game, and it's obviously what I expected, but seeing it firsthand is actually really cool. But from your point of view, like, is there anything specific you'd like to call out? Any experience that you had so far with territory capture?
Really like having my own mines to sit on. It's very convenient. Yeah, we knew that the organization for alliances was a central theme of territory capture. The ability for me to get together with some friends at a set time. Everybody knows what the time will be, and they all get together and fight for something. Fight for my homeland. Fight for the ability to take something from somebody else's homeland. It was very much part of the dynamic that we wanted to encourage with territory capture. That we wanted to make fun for players with territory capture. So we knew that there'd be some level of consolidation going in for alliances to want to group together because numbers are important. But hopefully that's a very positive social dynamic. Like you said, upgrading your Discord, getting into an organized group. Those are the parts of Star Trek that make it really a really powerful MMO style game, and we really wanted to drive that.
I grew up with very hardcore games and very hardcore social games, to a point that those games sometimes allowed a full destruction of other accounts, but that's a completely different story. The best memories I have from that time were when we got together and got our spreadsheet skills together and organized something, and as a group achieved something that seemed completely impossible. We outmathed whatever problem it was, out-organized the other alliances. Those are really the memories that stuck with it and stuck with me. We're hoping that with territory capture, we can create a lot of these memories, and it's great to already see some of that happening all over Star Trek Fleet Command.
It's been an amazing ride for the first 2 years of Star Trek Fleet Command. Number of features, content, new IPs, and expansion of the Star Trek universe that we've been excited about. This was really one of our better moments that we thought to invest deeply. It took us a long time to build it. We were excited to announce it early and excited more to get it out in front of players. Of course, we're not done, both improving, territory capture itself and looking for other amazing opportunities that lie in front of us to share with all of you, our players and fans. Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks DesignerDunsel, DesignerData, and DesignerKeenser for joining us today for episode 3 on our Commanders Hub podcast. On that, happy holidays to everyone, and we'll see you in the galaxy. Live long and prosper, Commanders. Thanks again.